What's up, everybody? It's your favorite Dark Lord, the Sith's favorite nerd. Today we are looking at the Hot Toys Empire Strikes Back Darth Vader. This is the one that I chose for my Darth Vader. It's my favorite Vader in the series. It's where I think Vader is really and truly defined in the series. So this was kind of a no-brainer for me. But he comes with a slew of accessories, and there's no time like the present, so let's get started. And you know I like to start with the base. No treble, as it were. So this does take some assembly. It's not exactly rocket science. You just slide this piece onto here. They're on T-joints. And then connect this. This has a cutout, so you should be able to follow. This is 3 pegs to 3 holes over here. You gotta take this piece off. That's protecting the pegs. And then, of course, your tensioned, pronged crotch support in the back. And it takes AAA batteries that once you have installed, you can turn on a little light. So, how about that? Pretty sweet. It's a whole lot of bass, but pretty sweet. Now, detailings wise, it's painted top to bottom. We have like flecked paint on the black bits, and then the gray is all weathered. We have this, which is painted silver and then washed with black, airbrushing around the edges for weathering effects. This is painted silver and copper, translucent there, and then silver on these 2 spikes here. Really done up to the nines. You get 2 replacement wrist ball hinges, so they'll swivel at both ends and hinge up down, so you can get up, down, or in, out. You get a couple extra little buttons per usual as well. You get a wide array of hands, including a lot of opposing hands, which is nice. But you get left and right holding hands. You get this posing hand here, leaning up against the railing perhaps. This hand reaching out. You get a pointing hand. You get a force-using hand, or another holding the banister hand. You get a fist hand, and you get, obviously, the swap-out hand that you can light up the lightsaber. I'm not going to use this one, but it does come with batteries for it that you can put in there, and then it activates the same as all the other ones. I don't even know where the switch is, but let me see if I can find that. So you actually take this apart, this pegs in, and then you can have access here to get the batteries, and then there's the switch, and then you just peg it back together. To me, I never use the light up features anyway, so I'm not going to use it for this, but lightsaber hilt looks nice. We'll talk about that in a bit. And then, as you can see, you do get the double jointed elbow, and the hilt obviously does take the blade. It's interchangeable. Now you get pretty much what they've been doing recently, which is 1 lightsaber hilt. We have the chrome. We have a lot of sculpted detail. We have some bronze paint painted on. All looks nice with the D-ring. And then you have the translucent red blade that is removable, and then you can put this inside the other one that lights up, or you can use this one, which, as you guys know, I think is a cool idea, but I just don't think it works like they would intend it or wish it did. So nice options per usual. And he holds that just fine, and the D-ring will clip onto the belt or hang off of the belt. So everything works as it should. And then lastly, it's not really an accessory, more so a gimmick, but it's worth talking about. You can remove the back of the helmet, like that scene in that movie, and then you can see the back of the head, which is all painted beautifully. It's sculpted well, and then it's painted, it's washed, and then all the little doodads and buttons and whistles and so forth are painted with the silver and gold. And then we have the gunmetal silver on top. You have all sorts of gold and silver sculpted detail and paint detail along the top. So that all works nice. The issue that I have with it is when you go to manipulate the head, it ends up popping off a lot. Like, I'm not sure it's worth it. I would have liked to have kind of more control over posing the head of the figure than having that extra gimmick that I'll never use, because I'm not going to display my figure from the back. And if you have Vader in a helmet, I feel like the chances of you displaying it without it are very slim. Sculpt likeness wise, it's pretty much spot on. If I were to be nitpicky, the one thing I would point out is that I feel like the sculpt of the eyelids, for lack of a better term, right around the time, are maybe a bit too pronounced on the Hot Toys version. Like, maybe the helmet should come down just ever so slightly, but obviously that's very nitpicky. It even has this little blemish here And I feel like I see that blemish in some of the pictures that I've been looking at. So it might be more spot on than I even initially realized. Or I could be looking at sketchy pictures. Either are totally possible. All right, let's talk soft goods. Let's talk details. So the helmet does have a nice gloss plastic look to it, reflects light well. That was important to me. It is a metallic flecked looking helmet, like face piece, which also looks good. The silver is painted on there, looks good, and so is the silver on the nose, for lack of a better term. Gunmetal silver painted around the base of the neck. We have gunmetal silver in the glossy black around the collar. All of that looks good. The cape is fine. I feel like it's a little too satiny, and I'm being nitpicky because it doesn't bother me, but if I'm being critical of it, that would be kind of my critical opinion. And moving on down, we have all of these details that are done well. Looks great, both on the sides. We have a little bit of weathering around the edges, green metallics, and then the silvers painted on. All looks fantastic. We had this kind of pleated soft goods here that goes underneath the belt. These clip on kind of like this onto the belt. And then this, I feel like also looks satiny, but I like the weight of this and the pleats and all that. It looks much more realistic to me than the cape necessarily. However, I'm going to have his cape peeled back a bit for the pose that I'm going to absolutely, definitely 100% end up putting him in. So it's not going to bother me because I like it like that a lot. It's a little Gwen Stefani Pharrell reference on top of that. And all these little boxes light up as well by taking them off the belt and applying the same type of batteries to them. We had this like faux leather for the arms with all this stitching. Looks perfect. The gloves, plastic, looks perfect. We have the legs in here, that faux leather once again, different faux leather here. The stitching down all looks proportionate and good. And then we have the glossy plastic down here on the boots, and then the plastic leather looking boots here as well. All of it looks absolutely phenomenal. The back does look a little goofy, but you're not going to see it without the cape, so it doesn't matter. Meanwhile, the back of the cape looks tremendous, especially with all the kind of folds and stuff that are natural in the cape. So pretty outstanding, to be honest. Articulation wise, the head I think is on a double ball peg. However, it might just be a single. The problem is as you go to move it around, the chain on the cape for one ends up getting jammed underneath, and it's like hard to kind of sort out. Also, the back of the helmet tends to come unstraightened. Right now, as you can see, it's not straight. And it's because they included that gimmick, and I'm just not sure it was the right move ultimately. The arms, disc hinge in the shoulder. The flaps are kind of, I can't tell. I guess they're on this piece of plastic that connects the two underneath, so it will get up and out of your way a bit on the shoulder pad, which will allow you to get almost 90 degrees out. It's a little shy of 90 degrees for sure, but it's pretty close. It's more close than the camera's letting on. And then you can move it around, a little limited in the front because of the soft goods and the way that they're bunching up, and I can feel it pulling against the stitching, so I'm not going to push it much further. Double jointed elbow that even with the leather works perfectly. That can be challenging. And then you had that wrist joint. However, with the glove, you pretty much just only get the swivel out of it. Like, I can't really get anything else in there, so that's a bit of a bummer. For the chest, it's definitely a double ball peg from the chest into the abdomen, and then a single from the abdomen into the pelvis, but you don't really get a lot out of it because of the bunchiness of the soft goods underneath. Like, we have layers upon layers, so you pretty much just get the swivel, but I think the swivel is all you'll need. The articulation for the arm is the same as the other side. For the hips, I would imagine they're T-jointed ball joints. Once again, articulation is very limited out to the side, very limited to the front and back. That's because of the soft goods, so it's just a bummer. Double jointed knee, that works surprisingly well. It bunches up and gets a little bit ugly, but it does work. And then the ankles are a double ball peg. You get a great ankle tilt down and up slightly because of the boot armor kind of gets in the way, and then you get a rocker as well. So articulation on this guy is not the best. Just be forewarned, you're gonna have to kind of go with a very stoic pose. The good news is that I think most people keep Vader in a stoic pose anyway. And there's a little behind glass size comparison with him and Tarkin. I swapped out the bases because I need to fit a few more. I need to fit the Emperor in here as well, so good size though. Final thoughts wise, let's start with the negative, and unfortunately there is a fair amount of negative to talk about. The helmet is definitely troublesome. It is the most plaguing issue I have with this figure, both in manipulating it, posing it, selling it, not to another person, but in a display, etc. My next criticism would be the articulation. Now, Vader isn't the most acrobatic of characters in the universe anyway, but I do feel like it'd be nice to get a little bit more out of him than you actually get. I understand that the soft goods make that challenging. I'm just saying in a perfect world, I would have preferred it. Some of the articulation matters more than others, to include the wrists, which do pose problems, so to speak. Am I right? In dealing with the hands, and it would have been much appreciated to get a little bit more out of all the articulation that's built in to the chest and abdomen area. Lastly, I'm not crazy about the fabric choice of the cape. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I'm not sure it's the best either. And on to the positives, which there are plenty of. Sculpt, all the sculpt work is amazing. All the paint work is amazing. The base is amazing. Plenty of accessories, and all of them are appropriate to the figure. A lot of the soft goods are done extremely well. The faux leather stuff, all the plastic stuff, the belt, the inner robes, all extremely well executed. The presence is fantastic. The likeness is fantastic. So, money time. Do I recommend it? I recommend it if you are looking specifically for an episode 5 Vader like I was. If you're not, if you just want a great Vader, it might be worthwhile seeing what they end up doing for Return of the Jedi. The designs aren't that different, and I can see how they could do better than this if they wanted to. I would imagine that the Jedi design is going to do away with a couple things that make this more troublesome. I would have hoped that they had swap out heads as opposed to pieces. That would do away with the helmet issues. But this figure, one of the things that really challenges it is the playability of it. And I don't mean mucking about with it on the floor. I mean getting it posed, getting it into the position you want it to. Things like the articulation, the helmet staying straight, and the wrist pegs pegging in all create challenges that make the experience less enjoyable. So while I'm happy with my purchase because this is the exact Vader I wanted, if you're not as hardcore stuck on this specific representation as I am, it might be worthwhile waiting. Hope that helps. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Till next time, take care.